All right, good afternoon. I'm Lily, and I guess this is my first vlog entry. Just finished working from home, so same location. I was thinking of something, that there isn't much of on YouTube or just information in general. Of course, about music, because that's my whole life. I breathe music, I listen to music, I hear it, I dream of it. So, but there's a lot of technical videos on YouTube, like how to mix, how to, make a track. And I was thinking more of talking about more of the philosophical part and how to get inspired, how to make your thoughts and your feelings come to life. I actually had this discussion with someone that I'm doing sound design with remotely, and I thought I would share like the discussion that we had, which was really, really uplifting, really inspiring. Like, first off, what is the way that I start a song? How do I make a song? Is there even a system or a template that I always follow? And the answer is like, it's mostly always the same process of going through, because now I'm a sound designer and my work is I spend all day listening to different sounds, and this happens to me usually once a day or a few times a week. I'm playing some chords, I'm playing a melody, I'm browsing, I come up with a sound that is just instantly catches me. It like strikes a chord, and makes me feel something, like immediately stops me dead in my tracks. And so I stop what I'm doing momentarily. I try not to steer off the path too long, especially if I'm working. But just 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes, where I'll capture that moment, because I don't want to lose it. It's like when you have a brilliant idea, and if you're not spontaneous to record that, either on paper or like in a recording, then an hour later you'll be like, yeah, I had this great idea, but it's gone. It just vanishes. And so you don't want that to happen. So if you have any means of like capturing that moment, that thing that makes you suddenly feel emotional or just feel connection. To me, it's like usually I feel like a connection. Sometimes it's like, you don't have to be spiritual to maybe understand when I say like that you feel something is connecting you to another life, to a past life, or just another dimension, and it just transcends, your current physical body and your current day-to-day. That's when I know, like, okay, this has substance, this is something that I should work with, that I should work on. And so I'll open a project. If I'm on my computer, I'll open Ableton Live and I'll just record that loop. I'll start to loop that, in a coherent way. And sometimes it takes a bit of time to also rhythmically, move things around. Maybe you start with it in a certain rhythmic pattern, but then you realize it can sound better differently. And so you're just tweaking a little bit to start, and then you just play that loop. And I just get into the zone with it, like it's a sort of hypnotic, meditative. Sometimes I'll get a bit worn out and I know I need to breathe, I need to come back to it later. And other times I just go right down the rabbit hole, and then I start to go look for other instrumental accompaniments, Most of the time, 99% of the time, my beginning theme is melodic. It's a melodic element, so it's the pad, it's the keys, it's a harmony or a melody line, a melody hook, and it's mostly in the mid or upper range, because that's just what makes me usually brings out these emotions. I guess when I'm composing and I get intense feelings from a pad, from a sequence, from a melody line, then I will start to create the entire atmosphere of that thing, of that theme, by ornamenting and surrounding it. And so in the end, when you hear the full track, you might be like, okay, there's the groove, there's the bass, there's the, the percussion, and then there's all these other elements. But for me, when I hear it, I'm going to hear like, the center, the core, which is my theme, which is the thing that got me feeling it in the first place, that got me interested. And that's my core, that's the heart. And then everything around it is just there to do it service and to do it justice and to bring it, to give it more drive and give it more momentum and evolution and modulation. But the rest is just accessory to like what really counts. And I forgot the name right now, but when we were doing music classes in my sound engineering school, it was a music sort of exercise to listen to famous songs, and then we would have to identify what is the recurring theme, but there was a different name for it. It's like the key, I guess, like the key theme, the thematic point, you know. What is that? What is the element in that really famous track that gets stuck in your head? That's the thing that defines that song. I discover it and I play around with it, record it, you know. Sometimes I save it on a project file, and it just gets forgotten. But I never delete it if I feel like it has something, you know, it makes me feel something, and it's worth it in that case. Even if I'm maybe not in the mood, maybe I won't be in the mood for 5 years. It doesn't matter. If I can tell it has substance, then I don't throw it. I keep that project. And one of my latest tracks, actually, You Fall Free, it's that I released last year in my album, The Blue Flame Within, because I kept thinking about this project that I never finished, and it was this melody line that was haunting, and I loved in it because it felt like so mysterious and had so many things that I wanted to develop. But at the time, it just kind of, I reached sort of a dead end, and I put it to the side, and that was in 2011. So imagine, so like almost 10 years later, I released it. I dug it out, and then I mixed it, and I polished it properly. So yeah, that for me, that's a really, good lesson of like not giving up on stuff. If you're just not feeling it right now, it might come to life later. And sometimes what may seem like a great idea, actually, it fizzles out, and you just move on, don't get too hung up on it. It's like, sometimes you have passing thoughts, and if they die out, it's not a big deal, just move on. Of a piece that I made that was born from this pure inspiration is called Love You So, and it's an ambient, it's a beatless track. And it really started with a preset that I made in the 𝗵𝗎𝗐, which is a software synth by 𝗏𝗏, and I made this deep, really deep resonant, it's called abyss pad, so to give you an idea how deep it is. And just a hook that repeats itself. I looped it, and then I felt like this is very deep, it's very clean, but it's lacking that harmonic imperfection and warmth, from that you can get from a voice or you can get from a cello. So I didn't have my cello at the time, and I didn't feel like singing. And what I felt like was adding a bass line, but not with a software synth. What did I have laying around? I had my acoustic guitar laying around, so I just started to make the bass line. And so you can hear, I had the microphone really close as well. And so you can hear the fingers, slipping, gripping onto the chords. that sound coupled with the pad, it already becomes much more wholesome. And so I feel like when I'm composing, actually, it's all about balance. You know, like in nature, when there's something lacking, then that thing that's lacking is going to come and fill that void. And I feel like that's what I'm always doing. Some composers, some producers I love, like 𝗵𝗋𝚗𝚗, they have super abrasive, even like if you listen to early electronic music, I love this contrast that you often hear of like these really cold and abrasive grooves and percussions. But then the pad is like so smooth and like just dreamlike. It's like otherworldly. And then when you combine those two, it works. Whereas, you know, if you had just one of them by themselves, it's like it's just the polarity of it makes it really work together. I hope that makes sense. It's even intuitive. It's unconsciously I'm trying to find that balance, the hot and cold, you know, the harsh and the smooth, the melancholy and the upbeat, and all these things together make these really interesting combos. And it creates ambiguity, which makes you interested, makes you, at least for me, that's what makes me interested in a piece. Sometimes I can't quite figure it out, you know, because it's making me feel all of these different things, these mixed feelings, mixed emotions. So some of the methods that I recommend trying out, like consciously, is decorating the space. I like to look at a track as a tapestry. You know, if you imagine like those, you know, old medieval tapestries or like Middle Eastern carpets with incredible patterns and like rich colors, it's the same thing. Of course, this is going to depend on the genre of music that you're in. Like some tracks, some styles are extremely sparse. There's not much in there harmonically, you know, it's like very like some IDM. If you're looking to create something really wholesome and balanced in your mix, when I listen to my earlier stuff, like from 12 years ago, it's interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on. I didn't have any restrictions in my mind of like how to make a song, because I guess that's the freeing side of like being completely new to something, is you don't have all this methodology that's been built, you know, around what you do. So in a way, it's more original. But so yeah, the music itself was interesting, but it was just it felt kind of sad, like kind of poor, because I felt like there was not much going on in the background. It wasn't full. I guess that's the word. It just felt thin. It was thinned out, and then I realized I started to pay more attention to the music producers that I really enjoyed listening to, that I thought that their craft was really well made. And then I realized that there was always these soundscapes, or like these just noise, even like furniture in the background, like, you know, decorating and filling up that space harmonically. So sometimes if you hear some electronic, like even dance music, like just techno and tech house, you'll hear in the background sometimes it sounds like someone went with a field recorder and recorded a beach. So like nature sounds, but also just city sounds, conversations, but like muffled, you know, and this like all of a sudden it thickens the tapestry. The really interesting thing is that if you're not paying attention, if you're not really trying to figure out where is that depth coming from, it's going to go unnoticed. The track is just going to sound really rich. It's going to sound really full of life and full of variations, full of very organic variations, and you won't even be like, oh, that's because this person put a field recording in the background, if that makes sense. Another tip I have, and this is really like an art form in itself, you know, and not just in music, but it's like the power of suggesting, the power of suggestion without overtly stating your melodic ideas, your musical ideas. So, you know, maybe in your mind, you know exactly what you're trying to deliver. You're going to trust your musical production skills, your musical craft to make the listener fill those gaps themselves. So sometimes it's a note, you know, sometimes it's like harmony. So this can be even like playing with the velocities of your melody line or of your bass line, just hinting barely at certain notes instead of having them in your face. And again, this really depends on the genre. If you're doing some like power 80s, you know, pop song like The Weeknd, Blinding Lights, like every note is hit with the same intensity, you know, and it's in your face, that's because it's that style of music. But I'm just talking about what I do, because I like to work with subtlety. I'm interested in how the mind fills those gaps and how the mind actually fills the gaps that you give it with your imagination. And so then it just becomes like almost like a dance between the music that you're hearing and what the mind is completing it with. And for me, that's where the magic really happens. And then when your body gets into it too, when you start to dance unconsciously, you start to move. Those are a couple of tips just for this first time. So I would like to invite you today to improvise on a melody. So whatever melody comes into your head and you start singing it, just go with that and then find a groove to give it momentum. Like just try that and see where it takes you. I'll share a track right now called 𝗀𝗵𝗿, which means dawn in French. In which I really literally just improvised and like was soloing with this lead. I got my drum machine and I made a groove to go with it, and then that's pretty much the track. There are some, of course I ornamented it with a few other things, but that became a song on my album. Try that today, and thank you so much for watching. If you want to follow more of these anecdotes and these stories, then please follow me, please stick with me, and I'll see you soon.